Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The spa and spa life, the SPA, is for seek power always, that power within you to do your deeper work in the world. Speaking of harmony in your life, we're going to be talking to this wonderful songstress here. I am so excited and thrilled to introduce to the show the internationally acclaimed vocalist, Sharon Marie Cline, who has become a favorite of the Southern California jazz club scene and abroad. She performs with the finest musicians, the finest jazz musicians in the most exclusive rooms on the West Coast and across the country. Now, listen to this, because I want you guys to, if you haven't heard her music yet, just the words surrounding her voice and who she is, I really want you to get present to this. Elegant song styling capped by a sultry, smoky voice. This jazz siren harkens back to the vintage days of Vaughan and Phyllis Hyman, yet offers a fresh contemporary touch to the beloved American Songbook and Broadway standards. Through a Los Angeles-based songstress, she is in constant demand throughout the country and is customarily backed by a group of brazenly dubbed the Bad Boyz of Jazz. Sharon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Diane. I'm glad to be here.
This is just so beautiful to be here right now. I think that just songs in general, if you think of a song, it can just take you back to a time. It can really lift your spirits and really have you the world is just a brighter space with music. And I'd love to know, has music always been part of your life? What got you into being a singer, and why jazz?
Great questions. Music has been a part of my life, most of my life. My mother started entering me into theater groups, music groups as a really young child because I was quote unquote shy. It was more that I just couldn't figure out how to express all that was inside of me. So I kept it quiet. So by being around more creative types, it helped to kind of cultivate the confidence to express what was going on inside of me. So I've always had music in my life, whether it's been listening to on our phonograph like Frank Sinatra or the Duke Ellington Orchestra while I'm doing my chores around the house, always having that, or always being in a group around school, as a very young child. So it's always been there. It's always been my way of connecting to source, connecting with others, to expressing the messages of my heart. And it continues to guide me, just music does. Mm. Now, jazz in particular came into my life because I started to really focus on jazz in college. And something about the way the music and the melody and the emotion kind of are intertwined just was the sweet spot for me. It's like a way of, it goes straight into your heart or straight into your imagination or straight into your being, because you can feel like there's a spontaneity to it. You can feel the emotion of the singer or the instrumentalist, but then there's the marriage of like the structure of the melody and then the harmony that goes through it. It's just, there's nothing like it for me. And it's not like classical music where it's just has to be the way it is every time. With jazz, every time you perform it, it's a different experience because of the artist.
I love it. I love it. Well, one of the things I'd really love for us to just dive deep into is just the journey of you as an artist, and particularly as a female artist. And throughout the decades, how has that shifted for you? How's that changed? What were just maybe some surprises? What were some challenges? And what was it like that first time you were on stage?
Oh, how do I remember back to the first time? First time I was on stage, I was so young that I was in 6th grade. So to me, it was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I forgot about all the pressures that come. I think I started to get more and more anxiety as I got older and as I started to carve out my own niche as an artist. But initially, and I still always have that amazing joy. Once you get past the intellect and and I'm actually on stage, I'm back to that little girl in 6th grade that's just so excited and so enthusiastic, and I can feel the electricity and the magic in the air between me and the audience. I always get back to that. But as I became more of an adult, I did realize, there's, you have a career you're starting to forge and a brand you're trying to establish and a level of excellence you're trying to achieve. So then you get to deal with all those excitement, anxiety things as you walk on. But as soon as I hit the stage, as soon as the first note is played and we're in the song, all that's gone and all I'm back is into the present moment. So it's a pretty extraordinary thing. You asked me about being a woman artist and the journey of that. It is interesting. It is interesting. And there are ways, you were saying like, has it changed from decade to decade? And I think there's like waves of more acknowledgement, and the more that I'm in a certain area more consistently, I think I get more respect as a woman, just because they then think of me as an artist. But as I venture out into each venue, there is a little bit of sexism that goes on there. I mean, venues and buyers would eventually go to one of my musicians, even though I'm the band leader, even though I'm the one they've been talking to on the phone, they'll go to them to ask them questions or so I find that interest. I've always found that interesting, that I've always had to reassert the authority. And that has kind of maintained through the decades that I've been doing this. It still exists, but the more I just kind of confront it with grace and just, bring your eyes back here, here you go. They actually do adjust, but it is harder for a woman. You also can, feel that amongst bands when you're not with your own band, when you're going to, oftentimes when you're touring, you work with the bands that are around, that bands are in the different cities. So, it takes them a minute to adjust to a new woman. They want to look at the woman in a different way than as the boss. They want to look at her as, the sexy thing that's playing with them, or, it's cute. So it just really takes a moment. But I've never had anything negative really happen, because I'm a woman band leader. It's just more about re-educating with my presence, how to treat me as an artist and not as what their concept of where I should be placed.
Right. I love that. Well, let's talk about just the evolution of you as an artist, and that, you have shared stages with just illustrious artists. I mean, like Tony Bennett, Nancy Wilson, Chris Botti. You have your own critically acclaimed album, right? It's This Is Where I Want to Be, which I want to talk about, how you chose that title and just the evolution of that, as well as some of your favorite songs in that. And, this has had, extensive international airplay, playing tribute not only to the American Songbook, but Broadway. But you also had original pieces. And so part of what I want to talk about here is a lot of times people will start their career singing the favorite songs that they grew up with, the people that inspired them. And then there's this segue where you're kind of jumping into the abyss of your own work and finding that authentic voice of yourself. Yeah. So if we can kind of talk about that trajectory of, stepping into your own work and working with these greats and how you vacillate between the two.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, because I really, the way I chose the title of the album came out in a lot of ways, but what I am really expressing there is the journey of finding my authentic voice. And I feel like through all my experiences, being able to meet and work with Tony Bennett, who's just, a luminous light, and a real down-to-earth kind of man, and all the other greats that I have worked with, some of them are big names and some of them are just giants because their artistry is so huge. I work through levels of absorbing what they do and then finding who I am in relationship to that. And then finding different pieces of music that speak to me and finding what my relationship to those pieces of music are. So then I'm always approaching something not as in emulating anyone or paying homage to anyone, but more of how does that feel in my being, and how can I communicate what that feels in my being? So this album is really about some great standards that are reimagined through the vessel of me. So they are my authentic voice. And it did take me years of singing songs the way I think I want to, but then other people tell me I should. So then trying to sing them that way, to finding like, what is Sharon really about? What is Sharon, and I find myself to be a vessel of light. I find myself to be full of joy and dreams and pain and lost and longing. And I allow that to come through me as I sing. And so that's what this album is about, is this is where I want to be, is authentically me. Sometimes it's really fun and light and goofy, and sometimes it's sad and painful and longing.
Right, all of life.
Yeah.
I love that. And so, what are some of the things that you do to consciously create your life? Like, what are some of just the things that you go to that allow you to maybe be more expressive? And, whether it's in your self-care or how do you get to that place so that you're creatively expressive? And so maybe share some of those things that you do in that. And then what would you say one of the songs are from the album that were an offshoot of that expression?
Okay, so I go to the beach as often as I can. And I don't mean go lay out and, sit in the sun and have fun with my friends. I actually go to let me say it this way. I go to the ocean. I'm lucky enough to live a block in, so I can walk there quite easily. But I like to spend time in the early morning just breathing in the air and watching the ocean waves come in and come out, go out, come in and go out. And that is one of the best ways that I connect to nature and to possibility and to the consistency of nature. Because I know no matter what's going on, another tide is going to come back in. So it kind of helps to ground me. And that's part of my self-care. I mean, I do a lot of things to self-care. I exercise, I eat well, I meditate every day. But there is actually nothing like, for me, the ocean. It's like a Pavlovian thing for me at this point. It's like I hear the ocean, or I smell the salty air, or I can feel the sand, and all of a sudden everything in me just calms. And then I feel an expansiveness and a peace that just hones me right in. And that's where I create from. That's the place.
So when you're like walking along the beach, do you have lyrics that come to you? Is there a melody that comes up to you? And were any of the songs, particularly in this album, like a reflection of what happened while being with the ocean?
Sure. Yeah, definitely the song. One of the songs I wrote, the title song, "This Is Where I Want to Be," definitely was from that. Just from listening to the waves coming in and out, and I could hear voices. You know how you can almost hear the voices in the waves when you're at the beach, when there are other people around, that it becomes part of the melody of that environment. That came from that, and the melody line came from just hearing the waves and how I wanted to create the song. Now, I co-wrote that. I primarily write lyrics and I hear melodies. I don't usually write the actual, the music. I collaborate with other people, mostly my music director, Rich Eames. And I brought him melody in that because of what I heard in the waves. So yeah, it inspires that, but it mostly inspires, I think, lyrics more than anything, because once I get space and once my head clears, my being expands, things just land, things just land. All turns of phrases land for me. So yeah, that's where I get it from.
I love that. There's something, so I can also imagine too, like when you create something, it's kind of like, okay, is this my best work? Right. And the comparison to past work and where you're maybe evolving into. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit about maybe some of the fear that comes up in this work. And I love how you talk about moving through fear, and you kind of tackle it from both ends, where from a place of stillness as well as movement. Mm-hmm. So I'd love for you to talk about just fear in general in your journey.
Yeah. Fear can be your friend or fear can be your enemy, depending on how your perspective or how you focus on it. So there are times, I would say all artists, but even more so all humans, we go through lots of experience of even wondering if we can still do this, and especially during these COVID times when I'm not able to perform as regularly. I mean, knock on wood, before COVID, I was performing almost weekly, and that's rare for an independent artist. So I knew how blessed I was. So much so I was ready to take a break, which now I'm like, I wish I hadn't said that.
Careful what you wish for.
Yes,
Sharon, did you bring this on?
I know it's my fault. Sorry. Because I sure got that break. But you start to doubt, because you're so used to getting out there and jumping in. The fear can be like a motivator. I always take fear on as okay, I feel this fear. How do I breathe through it? How do I jump in? And then I start surfing it, navigating it. And I find that it's a really, the fear became my friend. And instead of it being anxiety, it was actually excitement. So I always try to approach it that way. When I start to feel it, I feel like fear is like an indicator to me that there's a great possibility on the horizon. And I just now need to get my vibration to match that possibility. It's always an indicator that, there's someplace more I can go in my being, in my spiritual development, in my preparation, and in my joy. Just remembering that it really can that fast turn from anxiety to excitement based on how I step into it.
Yeah. So are any of your songs from the album, you think, reflective of just being in the face of that, just coming on the other side of something? Any songs come up around that?
No, not really, actually. I'm trying to think which one of the songs would be close to that. I think more for me, fear is the process part in the creative process. I haven't written anything about fear, and I actually think that's a great idea. I should really write something about that journey of turning from fear to a possibility, or fear to joy. How it being a tool. I would say every song on that album is a reflection of that journey, though, because I get an idea. Because every song we do, they are reimaginings of, either classic jazz standards or really amazing bossa nova tunes, or I have a reimagining of a 70s pop tune, Laughter in the Rain. I recreated them. So, we did rearrangements. I call them derangements because we take them apart. We do them. And there's always that little bit of when you're working it out, wait, have I really messed this thing up? Is it going to work? Are people going to like it? I go through fears. Are the band going to think I'm crazy? Or my music director, when I'm sharing with him, I'll share with him. It needs to have the mood of falling in love, or you're in a field and and you feel the sunlight, and he's looking at me what is that? That makes no sense. So I have
what note does that come in?
Yeah, exactly. So I have fear about how I may seem crazy, but I tell you, when I give them those notes, and now that they know me, we co-create so much better, than just it being okay, Little, we're going to do a C minor 7 here, and there's going to be a bossa nova, slow bossa nova tempo here. It's none of that. It's more this is the feeling, and then we start bringing in other textures. But I have fear about expressing myself and these crazy ideas that come into my head, and I have to bite the bullet and work it out and say it, or I say it a little bit and then they'll be oh, okay. And then I have the more courage to say a little bit more. I think always as an artist, when you have an idea, that hasn't really been done, or you're trying to recreate something, there's always fear.
Right. I can see that.
I choose to make it my friend.
What song on the album was most surprising to you? That it's either maybe different than the other ones, or it just evolved in a different way? Like, what was the most surprising song that's on there?
I think the most surprising and the most rewarding is Love Dance, which opens the album. It was really cool because we recorded that in studio, and we actually created, we obviously recorded everything in studio. We created the arrangement in studio on the spot.
Wow.
So it was hugely surprising. And I think it was also the first first song we recorded on the album, that we could come together and collaborate so instinctually. And so automatically, because there again was one of Sharon's crazy ideas about I wanted to have like a real sexy, undulating, slow, rhythmic, percussive beat that just kind of makes you feel like you're like either in Africa or something like that, where you're in the jungle and you're with your lover and and you're rediscovering love. And they're like, huh. And then they're like, okay. And then my drummer percussionist starts this kind of thing, and then my MD piano player starts playing some different chords, and then the bass player comes in with this really creative line, and all of a sudden we are working in such a synergistic way that it just evolved in studio. And it was my most surprising and my most taking a leap of faith kind of thing, because everyone knows who works in recordings that studio time is not cheap. so most people like to have a plan going in, and I just said, let's just go for it and see what happened. And I got to learn that my communication was clear and authentic, that it was received, and we were able to create something pretty magical together. So it's really magical. Loved it.
Yes. Well, I find this interesting that it's like the intention that you show up with, that it's like you can have maybe a thought of how it's going to be, but then to also leave the space to allow what happens in the space. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine when you're hearing a certain thing happening, going, oh, wait, can I have more of that? And I thought this was going to sound like this, but let's take that part out. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to have those collaborators that get where you're going, that this is almost like they're mini movies, right? I can feel like you're like, hey, I'm coming here and it feels like love here, and it's this kind of energy. And so this co-creation that's happening, how important does it become the people that you're collaborating with?
Very. And I am very clear about, especially when I'm doing an album, but even especially when I'm on stage, who are my collaborators? Mm-hmm. I always choose heart-centered people. I always choose wildly prolific, like in many areas, many genres, artists, so that they can bring in all their influences. And people who are willing to take a chance, because there are some people who really aren't. So I'm really clear about who I choose.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about, the pandemic shutdowns of 2020 and how that impacted the music industry and just entertainment in general. How do you feel like this is going to impact your own artistic career, and how do you think things are going to be different going forward in the industry?
I feel like I'm always the endless optimist. It's been hard for all of us to start out. I think there was an immediate just shut down because no one thought of a different way to do it. Especially those of us who perform live mostly. So it was daunting and scary in a shutdown, but it also provided me the opportunity, and I think many, to go in, find space, and start to figure out ways to communicate and express. I think it's given us more time to discover other parts of our being, because I know for myself, I was performing so much that it became about the outward manifestation and not the inner creation. So it's created some of that for me, but I've noticed in my colleagues, we've all begun, after the first couple of months of shock, started to figure out ways to express online, to get back into studios, safely, and now we're even starting to perform live a little bit more, finding different ways. But it is slow. It's been the worst, I think, for our venues, and that's the scariest part, because this is a world about how to make money, and a lot of these venues are not surviving the pandemic, especially, some of these historic, like even Catalina Jazz Club here in Los Angeles, which is an iconic, historic, anybody and everybody in jazz and even in the pop world has come and performed through there, and they're having trouble staying open. So it's a scary time, because I don't want us to lose a lot of venues. So we're trying to find ways to support those venues, because they have been a part of the fabric of this industry. Mm-hmm. But we are finding new ways to express ourselves. We'll survive. Yeah. We'll survive, and we'll be cool.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear, because I think there's something just so reminiscent and foundational about some of our older industries and places that, the greats have been there before. There's something about the energy of those rooms. So we have that in San Diego. The Belly Up is something where a lot of people have come through in a lot of different genres that have come through there. So it's a similar experience. So I totally get that. And speaking of reimagining just your life and what that looks like, one of the things I love asking my guests is to really look at your home environment, because, for some people may be listening to the show, some may be looking, and you have so much beauty in your space. And we have a different expression, like how we feel in our bedroom versus our kitchen versus, other living areas. What is your favorite room in your home, and why?
My bedroom, because it is cozy. It's red. I have hearts of love all around, and as you know, my moniker is "Navigate with Your Heart." That's my call to action to everyone, and that's how I try to live my life. And it's beautiful and opulent, and I like to express from that place of abundance. This is my second favorite room. This is my living space, because it's my living room, because it's bright but it's cozy, and it expresses the spiritual inspiration of my life. So between those are my two rooms. I go back and forth between this room and then just the sensuality of my bedroom and that heart space that I created there.
I love it. I love it. Well, and speaking of heart space, I would love for you to share about your heart movement.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's Navigate with Your Heart. And it kind of just evolved as my slogan based on just the way I kind of am. I am someone who desires to, move from my heart space, even no matter what's coming towards me. And I started to find more and more, I gravitated to music that expressed different emotions through the heart, whether it is longing and loss, or whether it is the possibility of great love. That is what I'm attracted to always. And I find my audiences are. And I found when I perform live, I seem to radiate that with my audiences, that they all come back up and tell me just like how it moved their heart, or how they were sad when they walked in the room, but just hearing my voice or the energy that came through me, they felt they felt more connected to their passion. And it's just my belief that all else fades away the more that we can stay connected to the passions of our heart, and allowing our heart to inform our heads and not our heads inform our hearts, that all things work out. So I've been doing that most of my life, and then I started realizing I've been doing that most of my life. And then I thought I wanted to share that with everyone. I would love to be a champion for us all, to identify with that still small voice that lives in our heart. And that's what Navigate with Your Heart is all about.
That is so beautiful. I love that. And, a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and, I think it's important to share the full scope of the journey, because there are certain things along the journey that can feel very disempowering and can derail people to get off the track of their dream, to be on focus. And then when you can move through that, there's ways to stand in your power. So can you share a little bit about some disempowering aspects of your journey and what you learned from them?
Yeah. As an artist and as an entrepreneur, some of the disempowering parts have been trying to marry the two. Is being an artist, but also someone who pays, musicians, who has recording spaces, can make money.
That's a different part of your brain.
It's a different part of your brain, and a lot of people don't even realize that there's a way to join the two. So there have been times when I have had great desire to do something, but I haven't been able to find the person or people to back it financially, because they always want something that they've, that's already been proven. Or when I walk into a venue, here's an even greater example, is, most venues don't even want to pay the artist. They want the artist to bring the audience. And I get that from that standpoint of the venue, but it's very disempowering for an artist to be responsible for a venue's
right.
A venue's
You're supposed to be the talent.
Yeah, we're supposed to be the talent. So it has sometimes been very frustrating, especially for live performance, to have to deal with that nuance in communities, whether they're local or regional, that they want you to be responsible for their base. And there have been times when personally I've been, I've been reluctant to actually even go into certain venues because of it. Because I find maybe my albums pay me more money, or my private events pay me more money so that I can keep doing what I love. So it's finding that balance. So I know I didn't say a really specific experience, with specific people, but I'm just telling you some of the obstacles that come up for
right.
Come up.
No, I think that's important to kind of get that overall picture. And what kind of advice would you give to kind of budding new artists, young girls who want to have a dream in this field? What's some advice you could give them?
I always say, study your masters. Whoever you deem them to be. Like for me, it was Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald and Nina Simone and Rochelle Farrell. I find people that I like and I study them. I practice, and then be true to yourself. You practice every day, be true to yourself. And being true to yourself is the journey, is finding what is truly you. So that's what I want to say. And don't give up. Don't give up. It is hard, yes, but the longer you have an intent focus through your heart, navigate with your heart, an intense focus, the easier it becomes. It really does. I mean, I know that they're different. The further I go up the chain or on my progressive track, there are different challenges that come. But if you're true to yourself and you remain focused, you'll know how to navigate those challenges more easily. I've discovered. So don't give up.
I love that so much. And I just know that, our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. They're going to want to know how to get your album and how to stay in contact with you. How can they do that, Sharon?
Sure. You can reach me through my website, SharonMarieCline.com, and it's Sharon Marie Cline with a C, like Patsy Cline, Sharon Marie Cline. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, Sharon Marie Cline. I'm on Facebook, Sharon Marie Cline. My Twitter is Divine Ms. MZ Cline. And you can reach me through all of those. I'm very present to all my social media audience, and I do respond quickly as much as possible. You may get my albums on all music retailers. You can watch my videos on YouTube. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Apple Music, Amazon, Google Play, iHeartRadio. You can find me in almost any digital resource. And my album, again, is my most recent album, is This Is Where I Want to Be. And expect some new music coming out in the next 3 months. I have some singles that will be dropping and a new project online. So please keep following me. And the more you follow me and I have some really fun videos. So please check me out on YouTube and like them.
Yes, the important aspect of that is to make sure we know you're out there, right?
Yeah.
It's so important. So we'll have those links as well in the show notes, so people will be able to capture those in case they're driving or they're out and about and they haven't had a chance to do that. And I just want to thank you, Sharon, for just sharing your journey and just your beauty in and out of who you're being here in the world. And I just so appreciate that. And I'd like to end with just this final question is, how are you being a positive disruptor in the world?
By going out and sharing my light with as many people as I can. That's how I do it, by navigating with my heart and by challenging you to do it as well. And by singing my heart song.
Yes. So beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show and just sharing your light.
Thank you.
And to our pleasure as well. And to our listeners, thank you so much for spending your precious time with us together in this community. This is how we get positive messages out into the world. If you've not put in your 5-star review, please make sure you've done that. If you have any questions, whether it's in the music industry or about Sharon's journey, or about our conversation, please put it in the comments, and, Sharon and I are both here on social media, and we love to hear what your questions are, your comments are, what inspired you in this. Put that all in there. We're happy to respond when you tag both of us in there to do that and get the messages out in the world. This is the kind of positive messages where you get to have an input by sharing this out in the world, subscribing so you know when it's coming next. This is how we create positive community. So I want to thank you so much for being here. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.